The story of how this series went from facing total hatred before it even premiered to winning the hearts and acceptance of the original fans after its release, proving itself truly worthy of the Fairly OddParents legacy, is a rarity in the world of animation. But sadly, as is often the case, even a great work can't survive long in the cutthroat world of modern animation, and above all, the business side of things. The potential cancellation of the Fairly OddParents A New Wish is a headline that has largely flown under the radar. However, we shouldn't panic just yet, as the word cancellation is quite ambiguous in this context. That said, it is undeniable that this great series is in danger. Today, we're going to look at everything happening with this successful revival, recapping its journey from a controversial debut to its massive redemption, and crucially, how the complicated situation with the franchise owners could put the future of Cosmo and Wanda in serious jeopardy. How does a series as successful as A New Wish find itself hanging by a thread? The answer is simple. Paramount. The parent company is currently undergoing a major restructuring. Paramount has been in a severe financial crisis for the last few years, accumulating massive debt, while their streaming service, Paramount Plus, has generated millions in losses in its attempt to compete with Netflix and Disney Plus. Adding to this, during the production and broadcast of the series, Paramount was locked in complex negotiations to sell or merge with Skydance Media. In times of a merger, companies freeze budgets and cancel projects to clean house and make the numbers look more attractive to buyers. Due to a lack of funds, Paramount pivoted their strategy. Instead of keeping their series exclusive to Paramount Plus, they decided to license them to competitors like Netflix to get quick cash. This explains why the series hit Netflix internationally so fast. However, this lack of exclusivity means Paramount cares less about investing in a second season, since selling the license is a one-off payment and doesn't generate recurring subscribers for them directly. All of this has triggered several rounds of mass layoffs. The Fairly OddParents team was dismantled the moment they delivered the final episode. While this is common in modern animation, the failure to retain key talents suggests they had no immediate plans to continue, leaving the IP in limbo. This leaves us all asking the same question: why wouldn't Paramount and Nickelodeon want to bet on a series as critically acclaimed and successful as A New Wish? Well, the answer is more complex than it seems. The uncertainty surrounding investment in any project right now is worrying. Combined with Paramount's financial crisis, the result is a tendency to make low-risk decisions. We have to remember that this revival didn't start on the right foot. Even before its premiere, there was a lot of distrust surrounding the series. This was understandable coming from fans, given that the final seasons of the original run, and even strange experiments like the first revival attempt, the Fairly OddParents Fairly Odder, the direct predecessor to A New Wish, were disasters. That mix of live action and animation was destroyed by critics and fans alike. It was received so poorly that Paramount eventually wiped it from their platform for tax write-offs. When the first images leaked showing the curious animation style blending 2D and 3D, fans dismissed it as cheap and claimed that ruined the show's legacy. On top of that, the fact that the protagonist would no longer be Timmy Turner, but rather a little black girl named Hazel, caused fans to view it as a personal attack on their childhood. It was labeled as forced inclusion and dismissed as a typical kids show with absurd humor just for cheap laughs. All of this made for an extremely negative reception. Fans, burned by the poor quality of Fairly Odder and the original show's later seasons, expected another train wreck, and accused Nickelodeon of refusing to let the franchise die. But the surprise was immense when the first episode dropped. Public opinion did a complete 180. Fans discovered that the animation mimicked a stop-motion style with variable frame rates, similar to Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, giving it a unique and vibrant visual identity. The story was praised for balancing classic absurd humor with genuinely emotional moments dealing with Hazel's loneliness and anxiety. The series became a hit, reinvigorating the fandom and validating Hazel as a worthy successor. From there, the show only grew in popularity, spawning viral moments like the episode revealing Cosmo and Wanda's true forms, beings with multiple eyes and spinning rings. It was a direct reference to biblically accurate angels, and the internet loved how bizarre and created the scene was, flooding social media with fan art and even animations recreating classic episodes with their true angel forms. We also had great moments like the return of Poof, or Peri in this case, short for a periwinkle, Cosmo and Wanda's son, who returned as a grown-up fairy godparent with a striking design, serving as the godparent to Dev Dimmadome, son of the owner of Dimmadelphia, and grandson of the classic Doug Dimmadome, owner of the Dimsdale Dimmadome. We even saw the return of the beloved yet hated babysitter, Vicky, who made life impossible for little Timmy in the classic series. And speaking of Timmy, sadly we didn't get to see him in this first season. Or well, not exactly. We have to remember that the first episode showed a bus driver who was actually an actor for a Crimson Chin movie. He looked exactly like Timmy did when he wished to be an adult for a day in the original series. Fans assumed this was the real Timmy Turner, living as a washed-up adult, which didn't sit well with the community as it felt like an insult to such a beloved character. But it wasn't long before the creators confirmed that this character was just an homage and a reference to that version of Timmy. They clarified that Timmy's true future is the one we saw at the end of Channel Chasers, an adult with children who has forgotten his fairy godparents. So while this fake Timmy kept appearing throughout the series, we're still waiting to see the real one, something that, given the uncertainty of a second season, might never happen. We can compare the situation of A New Wish with other similar series. Take successful examples like X-Men 97, perhaps the best recent example, which continued the 90s series by respecting the canon while maturing the plot and improving the animation, resulting in a resounding critical and commercial success. Or the 2017 DuckTales, a total reboot that changed the art style and deepened the lore of the Duck family, now considered the gold standard for how to modernize a classic without losing its essence. We can even look at series finales like Samurai Jack, which was revived years later on Adult Swim with a much darker, bloodier tone to close out the story, satisfying fans who grew up with it and waited so long to see the conclusion of our beloved Jack's journey. However, we can also look at other examples, this time of massive failures, like the previously mentioned The Fairly OddParents Fairly Odder. As we noted, it was such a total flop that even Paramount has tried to hide it so no one remembers it exists. Or one of the biggest modern examples of how not to revive a childhood series. Naturally, I'm referring to the controversial Velma. An attempt to make an adult prequel to Scooby-Doo, it was universally hated for radically changing the characters' personalities, relying on unfunny jokes, and abusing meta-ironic humor. Ironically, the show did get a second season due to hate watching, though fortunately the second season didn't have the same luck as the first and came and went without anyone caring. Then there's the Power Girls 2016, a reboot that stripped away the violence and serious tone of the original, filling it with dated internet memes and animation errors. It was clearly a failure compared to the original. All of this makes it clear that the terrain of modern animation is trickier than it looks. Building a loyal community and delivering a highly enjoyable show doesn't seem to be enough to sustain production. The constant competition for our attention from social media, added to the recent growth of independent animation like Glitch Productions with their successful risky series like The Amazing Digital Circus and Murder Drones, means this competitive multi-million-dollar industry tends to take fewer risks on these types of projects. And interestingly, this complicated situation might be partly the fans' fault. We have to remember that months before the official premiere, the entire season was leaked online, including dubs in other languages. This destroyed the weekly release strategy and television ratings on Nickelodeon, since most fans watched the series illegally before it officially dropped. Even though this wasn't done with bad intentions by the community, it was just a consequence of fans being excited to enjoy the full series as soon as possible. It may have caused Paramount and Nickelodeon to change their future plans and scrap the schedule they had prepared for the Fairly OddParents. Remember that for the most part, animated series sustain themselves on the merchandise they sell. We see it with The Amazing Digital Circus, selling everything from plushies to posters and figures just to keep the company afloat and develop new projects. However, for larger companies, these decisions are even more crucial. Merchandise can bring in huge profits, but it can also lead to huge losses if things don't sell as planned, a situation we know Paramount cannot afford right now. So the other option to keep a series alive is licensing the content, and it is precisely this last point that gives us a glimmer of hope regarding the uncertain future of the Fairly OddParents: A New Wish. Since the last update we have is that it arrived on Netflix internationally, there is a small possibility that if the numbers on Netflix are astronomical on a global level, the streaming platform could buy the rights to produce a second season, but this depends entirely on its streaming performance, as Paramount seems to have abandoned it completely. In conclusion, and to summarize what we've discussed in this video, despite the critical and viral success, multiple reports from the New Wish crew members indicated that after finishing production on season 1, the team was fired and the production studio dismantled. So evidently there was no order for a second season. Nickelodeon hasn't issued an official statement using the word cancelled, but the lack of immediate renewal and the release of the creative team are usually signs of the end, at least in the traditional television model. The Fairly OddParents: A New Wish is considered by the community to be an artistic miracle that revived the dead franchise, offering quality, heart, and respect for the source material. However, it seems to have been a victim of corporate mismanagement and leaks, leaving its future at a dead end, even as fans clamor for a continuation.